Is Canada better than the US?
This year, the number of Americans moving or traveling to Canada has doubled. And all of that due to the political situation, personal safety, and questionable government policies.
On the flip side, Canadian immigration has also increased due to COVID restrictions and high costs of living.
So in this video, we will once and for all answer the question, is Canada really better?
We've chosen 10 most important things that we will rank both countries on.
Let's go! Canada is larger than the States by territory, but the United States population is more than 330 million, compared to the measly 38 million in Canada. As a result, there are only 5 cities with population over 1 million in Canada, compared to 14 in the States. Population areas are heavily centralized in Canada, with 20% of all Canadian population spread across the top 5 cities. And why? Because these cities have most job opportunities and much better infrastructure than the rest of Canada. Since Canada is so large and cold and population is so low, it's just too expensive to build infrastructure everywhere. Another big thing you should know is that Canada has 2 official languages, English and French. Some cities are predominantly French-speaking, meaning that all road signs, services, and communication is done in French. US, on the other side, has no official language per se at the federal level, but English is typically used all over the country. Some states grant a special status to Spanish language. Alaska has made 20 native languages official, and Hawaiian is the official language of the state of Hawaii, along with English. There's definitely a lot more to choose from in the US in terms of the right climate, the location, and the kind of city you want to live in. So the US gets all the points on the city's criteria from us.
Housing in Canada is expensive. If you choose to live in Toronto or Vancouver, you may end up reconsidering your choice once you see rent prices in these cities. Interestingly, the average price of home in Canada is actually higher than the US. It's $550,000 American dollars in Canada versus $428,000 in the US. Homes are costlier in Canada due to low interest rates, high demand, foreign investors, and ever-growing immigration. Housing in the US is cheaper thanks to larger population, better infrastructure, and potential cheaper labor, illegal labor. See, it's easier to get lost in a crowd as an illegal immigrant when the population of the country is over 300 million people. But we'll get back to this topic a little bit later. You can still find cheaper housing in Canada though. The further you go from the major cities, the cheaper the housing gets. But keep in mind that the rest of Canada outside the metropolitan areas is a lot less developed than many mid-sized cities in the US. The US certainly wins the point here. Although Canadians often take off their shoes in the house, while Americans don't always have the habit of taking off their shoes, even when getting in bed. So we're giving Canada half a point for personal hygiene.
Interestingly, more immigrants flock to Canada than the United States. Thanks to that, the Canadian population is more culturally diverse. Almost 45% of Canadians belong to the second generation of immigrants, and around 20% were born outside of Canada. On the contrary, in the US, only 13% of the population is born outside of the country. Some of you are probably surprised to hear all of that stats, since we all know about the immigration issues between the US and its southern neighbor. Of course, the statistic accounts for legal immigration only, and Canada in general is a lot more welcoming to immigrants and refugees, simply because immigration is vital to Canada's economy. Canada has been improving its immigration system over the decades. It supports immigrants through every step of the immigration journey, from visa to finding your first job and helping you assimilate in the Canadian society. The US, on the other side, is not particularly known to have a supportive immigration policy. And honestly, it's fairly unstable because it oftentimes depends on who's in power. And of course, it helps that Canadians in general are very welcoming and polite and make you feel like you belong here from day one. Canada certainly gets a point from us here.
While America is led by a president, Canada is a member of the Commonwealth and is led by a prime minister. And technically, King Charles III is the head of state in Canada. In the US, there are 2 major parties. Canada has 4 major parties. And Canadian politics is way less polarizing. Canada in general is more liberal politically than the United States. There is no ban on abortion, the green smoky substance is legal, there are way less issues with racism, and the LGBTQ rights are widely recognized. In fact, Canada tops numerous lists in LGBTQ rights and freedoms, and it was the fourth country in the world to recognize same-sex marriage. In the US, this happened 10 years later, and given how segmented the US political system is, the LGBTQ rights may differ significantly depending on which state you're in. Time for another controversial topic: religion. Canada is mostly secular, and religion is separate from the government. In contrast, it's very common to see American politicians talk about religion, and some are very hardcore about it. Religion is used as a political platform in the United States. According to the survey, Canada ranks 12th among the least religious countries. Only 27% of Canadians reported that religion is an important part of their lives, as opposed to more than half of respondents in the United States. There is no majority religion in Canada, and since immigration has been on the rise, Canada is becoming more and more religiously diverse. Having said all that, Canada definitely gets the brownie points for political and religious diversity.
Canada passed its first gun laws in 1934. These laws have been shaped by the country's experience with gang violence in the 1930s, as well as by its own unique history, culture, geography, and demographics. It is illegal for anyone, except for the most part the police and the military, to possess guns. The law restricts handguns by requiring a registration to possess them. A permit is also required to carry weapons. It is issued under a limited and temporary circumstances only. There are also restrictions on what type of guns you can own in Canada. No automatic or semi-automatic rifles or handguns are allowed. Only single-shot rifles and shotguns are allowed, with certain restrictions on ammunition size and type, depending on what province you live in. This is totally different from the US, where you can easily buy a gun in Walmart and walk around with it like it's your favorite plushie toy. And you won't even be asked about a license or a permit. And this is one of the many reasons why crime rate in the US is higher, not to mention all other terrible accidents that happen in schools in the US. I'd give Canada 1 billion points for gun control.
Healthcare system is probably the most talked about difference between Canada and the United States. Canadians love bragging about their free healthcare, and that's something many Americans want. But we all know that the only free cheese is in a mousetrap, and the Canadian mousetrap is its income tax. That's what pays for our healthcare system. That is why healthcare system in Canada is complicated. Each province has its own different healthcare system, different health card, and different database. Different provinces' healthcare systems also cover different types of services. For example, some provinces don't cover dental services, while others cover massages. When moving to Canada, you should learn about the province's healthcare system in advance. Apart from all the bureaucracy, finding primary care physicians or getting timely medical exams can be a struggle, unless Canadian voters suddenly agree to pay more taxes, of course. The US situation with healthcare is different. Not better, not worse, it's just different. You can see any doctor and get any medical exam with a lot less hassle than in Canada, but this will come with a big bill, and private insurance in the US is both vital and expensive. But seems like Canada is doing something right, because the average life expectancy is longer in Canada. Canada wins brownie points here.
It is believed that Americans work more than Canadians. And I think it's totally true. To begin, Canadians are entitled to at least 2 weeks vacation. Every 5 hours, Canadian employees are given a 30-minute break, and all this is regulated by Canadian and provincial labor codes. In the United States, on the other hand, none of that is enforced by the labor code. Conditions of work are defined individually by each employer. Americans also have the right to breaks during the working day and to go on vacation. Americans, but they use them less often out of fear to be passed on promotion or getting a bad reputation, or even worse, getting fired because they're not hardworking enough. For many Americans, it's normal to work 50 hours a week just to show that you're worthy of respect and your salary. On the flip side, Canadians are more chill. They prefer to work 40 hours a week and much rather spend the rest of their time with their families or on their hobbies. Some companies offer 35-hour working weeks. There are also a handful of companies tasting a 4-day working weeks in Canada. Another cultural difference is how business meetings are conducted. Americans prefer to get down to business since time is money, and they're also more direct and therefore are perceived as more aggressive and competitive. Small talk may be considered a waste of time by Americans. On the other hand, Canadians, especially Franco-Canadians, value relationships and politeness more, and they need time to break the ice or just chat before discussing business. It's not uncommon to call for a 30-minute meeting and spend 20 minutes on small talk, and then 10 minutes for business. True story. Canadians also value collectivism. It starts from the young age. They sleep together on the floor in kindergartens, sit together at desks in school. They're taught to inspire and support each other, work and collaborate in groups. All this translates into the workplace in Canada. Working together and being a team player is much more valued than being individualistic, competitive, and strictly self-reliant smart-ass. So for this point, both Canada and the US score as a tie, because it all depends on your values and where you place your career in life.
Continuing this work-life balance topic, it's important to notice that parents have it great in Canada. Canada has governmental paid maternity leave for 1 year, or there is an option to take more and still get paid for it. Parental leave can be split between two parents in any way you like it. Yes, fathers can also go on parental leave. And while moms and dads are at home with their baby, they continue to receive part of their last salary, usually between 55 to 80%. In the United States, the parental situation is similar to vacation time. It's not the government that pays new moms and dads, it's their employer, and only if they choose to. New parents in the States get 12 weeks of work, with no guaranteed pay. Yes, you heard it right, 12 weeks, not 12 months. Everything is up to the employer. So of course Canada gets a point for paid parental leave.
Canadians definitely put more emphasis on higher education. According to a report from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, Canada has a large percentage of adults seeking higher education. The report also showed that Canada has the highest percentage of women with the college education. In comparison, the rate of illegal immigration in the US unfortunately hurts the stats even more. The fact that many immigration programs in Canada aim to attract highly educated and skilled professionals only adds to the statistics of people with higher education in Canada. This leads to a highly competitive job market, and many newcomers complain that it is not easy to find your first job in the field without networking or Canadian experience. US experience is not exempt from that, so Americans moving to Canada can easily face the same problem. American job market is also highly competitive. It attracts world-class professionals from all over the world, and it's less demanding to have an American experience to get the job. So don't be surprised when you arrive in Canada and take an Uber from the airport and your driver will be a lawyer or a doctor who wasn't able to get a job in Canada. Anyways, Canada takes the point here for having a more educated population. Oh, and talking about education.
Higher education is more affordable in Canada. Yes, we all know that America is home to some of the best universities globally: Harvard, Yale, Stanford, but majority of people can't afford to go to Harvard or even get into Harvard. And even a local college will cost close to $30,000 a year for your bachelor's degree. That means most of the students who don't qualify for scholarships end up close to $100,000 in debt in the end of their studies. In Canada, provincial residents benefit from lower tuition fees, and even international tuition fees are still lower than many American schools. A year of undergraduate university would cost around $6,000 for locals and around $15,000 to $20,000 for international students, even at the top schools in the country. Quebec is famous for the cheapest prices for higher education and attracts tens of thousands of students from all over the world each year. In addition to this, every province province has educational programs for residents free of charge. So if you want to change careers, but you're not sure whether you should invest and pay for higher education, you can try one of those upskilling programs first and see for yourself. The US, on the contrary, takes the survival of the fittest approach. If you want to go to school, you have to come up with a lot of money, and there is little to no free upskilling courses you can access. Canada certainly wins this one because of more affordable education.
So, drum roll!
Which of these 10 points surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. Is Canada better than the US in the end?
You decide for yourself. It depends on what matters to you the most in the end.
And if you've moved to Canada from the United States, please share your experience with others. What appeals to you the most and why?
And as usual, don't forget to click the like button below. It really helps our channel out. And make sure to subscribe to this channel if you don't want to miss our future videos.
You can choose what to watch next right here. For example, this video about choosing the right city to live in Canada.
And we will see you in the next one. Take care!